Hello and welcome to this exam practice revision session where we'll be focusing on 8-mark usefulness questions. Please note that this is a GCSE history revision session and it's for the Edexcel Legacy specification of 2017 or the summer of 2017. So if you're looking for a slightly different specification, you're more than welcome to watch, but just please be aware that your exam questions might be slightly different. So for this 8-mark usefulness question, here's an example. It might look something like this. How useful is source C to a historian studying medical knowledge in the ancient Roman period? Here's what's important. The question is asking us how useful the source is, so we need to make a judgment on that somewhere in our answer. If you're going for top marks for 8 marks, perhaps you're going to make that judgment at the beginning and then justify it throughout your answer, but minimum expectation, that last sentence of your answer should make a judgment. Perhaps you're going to say it's useful to a great extent, a limited extent, or whatever it might be, but try and make a judgment. So how useful is this source to a historian studying medical knowledge in the ancient Roman period? The key here is you must make sure you talk exclusively about the Roman period and what it shows about medical knowledge at that time. So what would an answer like that look like? Well, let's have a look. Okay, well, I always break these questions into 2 parts. So remember, we're looking at how useful the source is for a historian who's studying medical knowledge in ancient Roman times. Okay, so let's see, what does the source show? Always start with what you can see in the source and then how useful that is in terms of how accurate it is from your own knowledge. So let's have a look. Well, something that should stand out in this source to you is there seems to be a pig on an operating table here, and although my highlighting has perhaps not helped it, we've also got this man here who seems to be dissecting that pig. Around the table we seem to have a large number of other people who are watching this going on. And this is a woodcut of Galen doing a live dissection on a pig to prove a new theory that he has, and it was published during the Roman period. So what can we see? We can see Galen dissecting a pig. Okay, well, where do we go from here? So in our answer, like I said, we should start with what the source shows you and how accurate that is. So as a rule of thumb, I always start with the source shows. So for example, in this case, the source shows Galen dissecting a pig in front of a large audience. We've directly quoted the source. In this case, obviously we can't quote words, but we're quoting what we can see in the picture. This suggests, well, what does it suggest about medical knowledge in the ancient Roman period? This suggests that in the Roman period, the Romans were developing new knowledge on anatomy, because obviously he's doing that live dissection to find something out about the body. So I've said what I can see and what that suggests about the topic in the question, medical knowledge in the ancient Roman period. Now we need to go a little bit further. Like I said, we need to say how accurate that is. Something's only really that useful if it's accurate. So let's have a think. Is it accurate to say that Galen was doing live dissections on things like pigs to find out new things and develop knowledge of anatomy? Well, yeah, I'd say this is useful actually, because I know that it's very accurate. Galen did dissect pigs in front of huge audiences to prove his new theory that the brain controlled the body. He was able to convince a large number of people that the ancient Egyptians had been wrong about the heart controlling the body instead of the mind by cutting nerves in a pig's neck, proving that the pig was no longer able to make sound but was still alive, thereby proving that those nerves connecting the brain to the body must have been sending signals to it, which enabled the pig to control itself. So we've said what the source shows, we've said what it suggests, that they were finding out new things about anatomy, and we've said how accurate that is and that makes it useful. We said it is accurate because we know Galen really did make those discoveries and prove it to large numbers of people communicating his ideas, and therefore it's very useful. We can go beyond just thinking about what makes a source useful in terms of its accuracy using our own knowledge though. We can also think about how reliable the source is and how useful that can make the source by using information about where it comes from, who wrote it, when it was written, and what purpose it was written for, to decide whether or not it's accurate. and useful for telling us about medical knowledge in ancient Roman period as well. So the way I would do this is your second paragraph and your second step. The source was created in or by, well, in this case we said it was created by the Romans. Its purpose was to, but this one it might not always tell you. So what do we think the purpose of this source is? Well, the likelihood is this was created to showcase, for Galen to showcase what he was proving to other people. Clearly this person has some kind of respect for Galen. He's shown lots of people watching what he's doing. He doesn't seem to be being ridiculed. He's shown in a very formal way. He's got these intricate tools that he's using. It doesn't seem to be making fun of him in any way. So I think the purpose of this source was probably to communicate Galen's discovery to other people who were unable to see the dissection. Therefore, the source is, well, let's have a think. Do we think that it's got any reason to lie or exaggerate about Galen? Well, potentially this person might exaggerate the number of people who were in the room, because if it's being created to showcase Galen's ideas in order to sort of persuade other people that Galen was right, they're obviously going to show perhaps more people supporting him than in reality might have done when he first did his dissections. So in some ways perhaps it might be exaggerating the support he had. However, I think it's still very reliable for showing us that there must have been groups of people who were trying to take on Galen's ideas, and we know from our own knowledge that eventually lots of people were won over by Galen's ideas, and he created around 350 books on his knowledge, largely anatomical knowledge, and his ideas were followed for about 2,000 years. So in our answer we discussed what we can see, what it's suggesting about the topic in the question, medical knowledge in ancient Rome, and we've said why it's useful or less useful in terms of how accurate it is using our own knowledge. Then we moved on and we did a second paragraph by thinking about who created the source, when was it created, would those people have any reason to lie or exaggerate, how reliable might that source be. What I'd like you to do is have a go at writing this question on your own. So how useful is source C to a historian studying medical knowledge in the ancient Roman period? If you want, what you can do is pause this clip and use the sentence starters that are on the screen. Alternatively, you could have a go at structuring it in a different way, but make sure in your answers you talk about something you can see in the source, what that's suggesting, and how accurate that is using your own knowledge. And if you want top marks, you also need to talk about the provenance of the source. Where has it come from? Why was it created? And how reliable does this make the source? Good luck with your revision.